Make sure that's working. Hey, we're live. Welcome back to Tailosive EV live on YouTube, ladies and gentlemen. It's our first stream since Giga Berlin. Brandenburg has officially launched Come Online. It's delivered 30 vehicles as of yesterday, which may be more, which means it's already going to be a far more interesting earnings report because the delivery numbers that Tesla will be posting probably April 2nd or April 3rd for Q1 are going to include deliveries from three separate factories. Deliveries from Fremont, Shanghai, and Berlin now. And hopefully it's not too much longer before we get to count deliveries from Gigatexas. And that development is still getting more and more interesting. Figuring out what exact models they are delivering from Texas, which I think it's safe to say it's Gigatexas has been hit by Elon time. I didn't really get to talk much about that in yesterday's video, but there was kind of a debate going on between would Gigatexas or Giga Berlin start deliveries first. Now, of course, that has been answered for us. Hey, Real World EV, hi from England. Thanks for tuning in all the way across the pond. But yeah, Berlin obviously started construction first. It felt like it took a lot longer for the facility to come up online because of all the permits and a lot of construction processes and all that. But Gigatexas is still not started deliveries yet. But I think that my main goal here is just to talk about how quickly Tesla was able to get a production facility up and running in Germany. And I don't think people really truly grasp how long those types of projects usually take. There's a lot of doubt and a lot of pessimism at first when Giga Berlin was first announced, and people were like, oh man, everything moves slower in Germany. This is going to take longer than people realize. And sure, it did take longer than they originally thought. I believe their original goal was to have it online like in June or July of 2021, and obviously that did not happen. But most of those types of factory projects are known for taking closer to 3 or 4 years, and Tesla was able to accelerate that very, very quickly. To get to the point where basically just over 2 years, a little bit over 2 years, they were able to go from buying a property that was just trees, that was just, this man-made forest, and then turning that into a facility that's now churning out Model Ys at a pretty decent rate if you consider Giga Berlin delivered more vehicles yesterday than GM delivered all of last quarter in terms of electric vehicles. Yeah, I did watch discussions and events about hi Mike, about Elon. He talked about future models at Giga Berlin. He did get more specific than that, other than just saying exciting future models. I don't know what he means by that, but I personally believe he's talking about things that are kind of way off into the future because of how long it took for just Model Y production to begin there. And I know that construction crews can be working alongside a production ramp. At least they did in Giga Shanghai. So I hope something similar can happen in Berlin, where they're like, okay, we're focusing on ramping up Model Y production and getting more and more vehicles made, while simultaneously there's another construction project going on next door, because Shanghai did the Model 3 ramp as the Model Y facility was being built. Right now it feels like the construction crews are focusing on the 4680 cell factory being built. It's not so much a different side of the factory that's going to be specialized for Model 3 or European compact hatchback that Elon's talked about. Because he hasn't talked about it in so long, I almost consider it like not quite relevant at this point, like not probably not on the balance sheet. I think most of their time and money is going towards current production ramps and likely a lot of self-driving and software development when it comes to autonomy. But my main subject that I wanted to kick off the stream with is I think that no one is going to come close to Tesla's total production capacity because I don't see anyone moving at this point at the same speed. Even if Ford or VW was producing as many EVs as Tesla is now, and they were growing as fast as Tesla was, Tesla's still in the lead. Right? They still have a run rate of over 1 million vehicles a year. As of right now, Giga Berlin is starting to ramp. Gigatexas is going to come online soon. I think these factories from the ground up have been optimized for mainstreaming production. And I think Tesla even designs vehicles like the Model Y from the ground up, not just about like let's make it practical and let's give it good features and let's make a desirable product that people enjoy. But frankly, I think Tesla will even leave out features or leave out things that people would like, that people would prefer to see, just for the sake of that would complicate manufacturing and we would need to prioritize production capacity. And I don't really see that as often in legacy auto. Definitely no startup at this point is anywhere close to Tesla, and I don't think anyone will beat Tesla. No, Rivian said their goal is to build 10,000 vehicles this year. I don't even think they'll, or was that Lucid? I can't remember. It's some astronomically lower number. But at this rate, no, Rivian is just way too late, and their run rate is insanely small. I'm sorry, Corey. As much as I love Rivian, and I've been watching Out of Spec Motoring do all of his Rivian testing videos, I'm a big fan of the brand, but right now they're at like a few hundred vehicles per month, and Tesla is on a run rate to hit a million, well surpass a million vehicles this year. So Rivian would have to be growing faster than Tesla in order to eventually beat them. And right now, I don't see any company currently building as quickly as Tesla is, ramping up new factories and ramping up new facilities as quickly as Tesla is. And Tesla already has a lead. So keep in mind, even if someone was ramping as quickly as Tesla, they would have to, they would never catch up because Tesla's already ahead. They already have factories that are producing at insane scale. And if we're seeing like one company produce multiple gigafactories within a single year, and they have plans of announcing new gigafactories later this year, I personally think they will put another one in China because the demand in the market is so big there, and they already have two factories in the US, so why not have two factories in China? That's my prediction. I could be wrong. They might put it in Japan. Japan has a fairly large car market, as does some people want Brazil because there's a huge population there, but I think it's kind of a similar situation to India where the car market is inherently more budget approached. It's not like high priced vehicles are selling very well there, whereas high priced vehicles in Japan do a bit better. So I've heard that argument thrown out there. But overall, I just don't see companies innovating to the same sense in regards to manufacturing capacity when it comes to like the single piece casting presses and the 4680 structural pack. They're diligently working on that right now at Berlin. And frankly, I don't believe it's because they're trying to get the range numbers higher. I know that's what some people want. I know that's what some people are hoping to hear is that, oh, once you get 4680 cells, that means the charge time is faster. That means the cycle life is better. That means the range is better. Yeah, there might be some truth to that. I don't think they're going to be actually substantially better to the point that everyday people are going to care that much. Like the charge curve might be a little bit better than 2170 cells, but I'm not really expecting it to be miles better or like substantially better to where an everyday driver would actually notice the difference. I think that the 4680 cell's primary advantage is cost and simplicity in manufacturing and making a structural battery pack versus non-structural. These types of details are not just about profitability. I think that's another problem or misconception I see thrown around there a lot. Or people are like, well, just Tesla's greedy and they want more money. It's like, well, Tesla, if they can use less cells per vehicle or if they can spend less money on cells, that helps them ramp up production faster. How much time will need to get permission for expansion of Giga Berlin in future to get 2 million production, 4 to 5 years or less? I would say probably less. I am not an expert in permit requirements, but I'm under the belief that once you have a facility that's already operational, that's already consuming a certain amount of water and already has employees and is already delivering vehicles, I believe there's less paperwork and less steps to go forward with, because before this was just a construction facility. It was not an operational factory. Now there's employees working there, they're building cars, they're delivering them. So they have to prove a certain amount of safety and reliability with, okay, here's our fire exits and here's our quality control. And once you kind of get your foot in the door with, we are an operational factory now, I'm under the belief that there would be less permits and less paperwork required than after. I'm not saying no paperwork. I'm just saying less. But I'm sure you need to acquire permits and that kind of thing. But it's probably not the next step right now. I think at this point, Giga Berlin's next step, now that deliveries have begun, is figure out how to finish the 4680 cell plant and find ways of mass producing those cells at scale. And then you can switch those over in your factory and have better margins, and also, of course, improve your run rate. You can improve the number of vehicles you're capable of building with 4680 production. Why does Rivian need to beat Tesla? They can still be awesome without putting out the most cars. No, it's not. It's not about anyone beating Tesla. It's not that you're a bad company if you don't make as many as Tesla. This is just kind of my Super Bowl case that I'm bull is in Bull, not Bowl, but my Super Bowl case for Tesla. Even though, as if you guys have been watching my videos for a while, you're probably aware I'm not I'm not very bullish on robo taxis or autonomy or even the Tesla bot. I think that autonomous driving level 4 and 5 is further out than people realize, and I don't think it's going to happen this year. I don't think that technology is as close as Elon does or as Tesla does. But I don't care, because I see this production capacity being most of Tesla's business. Like, most of their bread and butter is going to be selling vehicles and how thick the profit margins are on these vehicles. How many people are willing to pay for them, so how much can Tesla get away with charging for them? That's where I see most of their business. I acknowledge that there's Megapack and solar, and there's software services like self-driving or premium connectivity. There's other sources of revenue. They are not strictly a car company, but I do think that's the majority of their revenue and will probably remain the majority of their revenue. Rivian does not need to beat Tesla, but all I'm saying is, as far as EV production capacity goes, no one is growing as fast as Tesla. Like, we saw Tesla go from 500,000 in 2020 to over 900,000 in 2021. And that was with 2 factories just scaling up capacity. And when it comes to 2022, now having 2 factories come online, I don't know why it's not crazy to expect another 80% growth or more. Because I think now that Berlin is operational, that they're going to ramp pretty quick. So my prediction is still 1.6 million vehicles are going to be delivered in 2022. I'm live streaming from my studio display, which I'm reviewing. That's the box for my tech channel, so that the center stage camera tracks with me a little bit. If you want more coverage of that, check out Talos of Tech. But this is EV, so I want to just talk Tesla right now, or EVs in general. But yeah, no, I don't see any scenario. Tesla would have to go under, or something would have to go very, very wrong for Rivian to beat them out. But Tesla can make 324 kilowatt hour charging speed. So well, it's not kilowatt hour if you're talking charging speed. Will it need 4680 or 2170 can take it with better cooling? I think people probably obsess a little bit too much about peak charging speed. Because ultimately you're going to be limited by how long the battery can sustain that peak charging speed. So maybe, I know Elon's referenced it, and he said that later superchargers are going to support 350 kilowatts. So you don't need the H on there. Kilowatt hours is a battery storage number. Like, if you have a Tesla Semi, would have something like 500 kilowatt hours or 800 kilowatt hours in it. Charging speed, you just say kilowatts. But how long can the battery take a 350 kilowatt charge rate? Probably only a few seconds before it has to taper off, and then and then you're done. So I don't really think it matters too much. It's possible that they could do it with 2170 cells, but probably 4680s would have it, because when Elon unveiled the Cybertruck, they said that would handle over 250 kilowatts. So ever since 2019, they've clearly been working on some type of consumer grade version of supercharging that goes faster than 250. It's just a matter of, like you said, can they cool the battery pack efficiently enough? But what matters more to me is how long they sustain that 350 kilowatts. And frankly, what should matter more to people is the efficiency of the battery pack. Because getting obsessed over kilowatts and how fast the charge rate is, when not taking into effect how many miles can that kilowatt hour take you, that will result in more miles put into the vehicle in a shorter period of time, much more than just because out of spec motoring has shown you can charge a Rivian at a fairly high charge rate, but it still takes a while to charge because the Rivian is just not that efficient. Granted, it's a pickup truck, so that's to be expected. It comes with the territory, but 324 kilowatts is crazy peak speed. 250 kilowatts is already ludicrous from my experience. Yeah. Well, I mean, Teslas don't even sustain 250 kilowatts for that long. You get it when your battery is low for a few minutes and then it tapers off. Yeah, like Variety Entertainment is saying. Curve is more important than peak speed. You want the largest area under the curve for shortest overall charging time, which isn't always the curve with the largest peak. That's another advantage of having a more efficient design. Like the Model Y coming out of Gigatexas is a bit more efficient than the long-range model. I think that the 4680 cells are less energy dense right now. That's my theory. I know that basically because of the EPA certification with the standard range all-wheel drive, the curb weight is pretty close to that of the long-range all-wheel drive. So most people thought, oh, it must be LFP. But then there was a Gigatexas Model Y used by a Tesla energy department. So they're not delivering vehicles yet, but there are Tesla employees driving around Gigatexas Model Ys. And people saw it supercharging, and they knew it was a Texas Model Y because they looked at the VIN, and the VIN had an A in the 11th character, which is for Austin. If it was a Fremont build, it would have an F there. And someone put it online on a VIN decoder, and that decoder told them that this Texas-made Model Y was a standard range all-wheel drive. So that implied that the EPA filing is from Gigatexas, and we know Gigatexas is building Model Ys with 4680s and structural pack. As far as we're aware, Elon and Tesla has never mentioned any kind of structural LFP pack. That's mostly speculative. I've seen people suggest that, but it's not been mentioned by Tesla at all. At one point, they said if 4680s aren't ready, we might use 2170 cells, but that's all they said. They never said they would consider LFP. I think that they're using 4680s at Gigatexas that are just less nickel dense. They're using less nickel per cell, and the cells themselves are not as high energy dense as they theoretically could be over time. So if they want to in the future improve the range and improve the efficiency, they can. They just don't want to right now because it's not crucial to make Model Ys with better range because we're already selling out. Basically, here's another fun fact for you. If you want to buy a Model Y this year and get it, by the end of 2022, you will need to spend $64,000 minimum. I'll say that again in case you're confused. That's a 2170 Model Y, built out of Fremont with all of its questionable quality control, with its dated battery pack technology that's not using the new cells. If you want a Model Y by the end of this year, 64 grand. That's the minimum. If you want it for less than 64 grand, it's sold out. You got to wait till 2023. So that's the situation with current Model Y demand with 330 miles of range. Can you imagine what would happen if they started selling one that was 350, 380? Oh my God, it would be absurd. It's already absurd. And it would get pushed out even further, and they would probably have to charge $80,000 for it. And they were probably weighing out their options as in, instead of selling a handful of $80,000 Model Ys, let's have a decent backlog, not a terrible one, but let's launch a 70, not 70, but 64 or $62,000 standard range all-wheel drive from Gigatexas, and maybe the delivery timelines on that one will be a little bit better. And it'll be a debate of, well, some people might cancel their order to get the vehicle a tad sooner. Inherently, they're going to try to make it not that great a deal. That way, the Fremont one is still worth it to a lot of people. Higher kilowatt rate capability will be important for truck markets that will have larger batteries. Yes, the Cybertruck, regardless of the Cybertruck being more aerodynamic and having a structural pack, it will still be heavier than a Model Y. Some people disagree with me on that. I'm pretty convinced it's a steel exoskeleton, it's much larger, and especially to get that big old truck to go over 300 miles or over 500 miles on a charge, which I'm having a harder and harder time believing they're going to actually hit those numbers, it's going to need a big battery pack. So you don't even really need it to hit 350 kilowatt. You really just need it to sustain 250 for longer, and you'll get more miles out of it. But I think even if the kilowatt rating is not as high as, say, a Rivian or an F-150 Lightning, the reason I laugh is because those are not rumored to get faster charging speeds. I think currently the Rivian is tapped out at 200 kilowatts, so it can't even charge at the same rate as a Model 3 can, which is just a little bit of the dated hardware that they're still shipping. Um, and I think the F-150 Lightning taps out at like 175 kilowatts or something like that. So, but let's say for the sake of the example, F-150 Lightning or the Rivian or the Hummer, I don't remember the peak charge rate of the Hummer because the Hummer is just kind of a joke to me. But even if those all supported 350 kilowatts and the Cybertruck supported 250 kilowatts and that was the maximum, the reason I think the Cybertruck would still charge faster is because I believe the Cybertruck will have the best efficiency out of all these trucks. The Rivian's over 7,000 pounds. I bet the F-150 Lightning is closer to 8. Hummer's over 9,000 pounds. So they need huge battery packs. Like the Hummer has 215 kilowatt hours of battery. The Cybertruck's more aerodynamic and will be lighter weight than those other trucks. Granted, yes, still heavier than a Model Y, but lighter than all these other pickup trucks because of the structural pack and the exoskeleton design, that you will need less energy to gain miles back. And as long as they're able to sustain a 250 kilowatt charge rate, then I don't think it'll matter if it doesn't go much faster than that. So it's kind of cool to talk about as a tech spec thing, to be like, wow, there's 350 kilowatts going into the car right now. But if the efficiency is crap, then it doesn't really result in anything that useful. I have a Model Y coming March 25th through April 8th. When is yours coming, you think? So mine estimated delivery date has not changed yet. So I'm still scheduled, I think, between July 7th and August 4th or something like that. So sometime in July is my current estimated delivery date. But I've seen it change. Not on my end, but I've seen other people say like, oh, it was estimated for this summer and then it got moved up several months, or it was estimated for the end of the year and then it got pushed up a bunch. So it's possible that my delivery date could come up really, really soon at any given moment, but it just hasn't happened yet. So Charlie McKinney says, just joined. How many years do you think it'll be before Tesla brings the Semi to Europe, either in Berlin or another Gigafactory? Obviously, it'll come to America first. Yeah, really. I want it to come to America. I want it to come everywhere. There's pictures and renders of Giga Berlin that they always have Tesla semis driving around. I have a feeling it's not going to be of top priority at Berlin for a while, just because, honestly, in the meantime, wait, either semi to Europe, either in Berlin or another Gigafactory. How did I read it wrong? What did I read wrong, Mike? How many years do you think it'll be? I don't see. I don't see how I read it wrong. What did I read? I think that it'll probably be cheaper to transport the Tesla Semi out of a production facility in America to Europe than it would be to probably build out a whole new semi assembly line in the European market. So I don't know. It kind of depends on how production at Giga Berlin goes. I want to say 3 or 4 years sounds right. I'm sure there's a market for it. Which one? Corey's question? I have a Model Y coming March 25th through April 8th. Where is it coming from, you think? Oh, well, where is it coming from? I see. You weren't asking about my... Sorry. Well, now you guys know. Now you know my estimated delivery. But, sorry, there's a lot of messages and a lot of text. Gotta pick up my wife now. Take care, Real World. Thanks for tuning in. I don't know. I'm not Tesla, but I don't know when it's coming. I don't know what it is. Pick a number. What's your favorite number? Halfway in between March 25th and April 8th. So I'd say like April 1st, April 2nd. Probably something like that. Oof Dad says, my order was put in last October for my long range. Just got bumped out now to August/October of this year. Man, yours is getting pushed backwards. I'm kind of worried that'll happen to mine. I really don't want that to happen. So are we seeing better quality control at Texas, or have they not started production there yet? I haven't been following very closely. Yes, so Gigatexas has started production. They have not started deliveries quite yet. So the one Gigatexas made Model Y that was at a supercharger was not great. It had a few alignment issues and a few panel gaps, but the reason I wouldn't put much credit to that or validity to that is because it's part of a production testing phase. So I believe it was built last month, February 21st was the production date on it. Um, I think I want to say it like at this stage it's in ramp up. So that there's all kinds of calibration going on at Gigatexas. So it's kind of too early to say if Gigatexas has better quality control. Um, when will Gigatexas produce 4680? Locally, I think is rumored. Sawyer claimed that they wanted to switch over to it. I think at around May. Right now, all of the 4680s they're using, um, I think all of the 4680s they're using are built at the Cato Road facility in Fremont. But yeah, pick my wife up. Say just for the record, I am terrible at reading. I know, but saying saying Reddit wrong doesn't help me. Uh, where do I think? Where is it coming from? Instead of when. Well, I don't have your VIN. Personally, I think everything's coming from Fremont at this point. I don't think anyone's order is confirmed coming from Austin. If you're coming from California, then yeah, very likely coming from Fremont. Um, Drew's excited about upcoming Tesla events. Giga Berlin opening up production. Giga Texas on the horizon. LFP3 delivery soon. I'm very excited. But yeah, I guess I'm reading more interesting comments than you're asking. Because if you just ask, where is it coming from? Or when will it get here? I don't know. That's impossible to know. But I could speculate on other stuff. Let's see. Is it time to see German Giga and Tesla as one, not as competition? I am German and not proud of bureaucracy, but all is changing with new government. I don't know if anyone is saying Giga German Giga Tesla is competition. No, it's all part of the same Tesla team. It's a good thing. 350 kilowatts will pay off for Cybertruck, which has a much bigger battery, so more cells in parallel, so we'll stay at a higher rate longer. Probably, but um, again, I think just the sustaining the higher charge rate is what matters more at the end of the day, rather than I think people are getting carried away with 350 is like I don't think people quite grasp that is an insane charge speed. 250 is already pretty dang high. Most Teslas don't charge at 250 for very long. If they do, they do it when the battery is low and then taper off. But yeah, at several points, I don't. I'm not in the personal belief that Gigatexas is like going to start quietly delivering vehicles to certain Model Y long range reservation holders. I believe if you have a Model Y reservation right now, you're getting it from Fremont, or if you're overseas, you're either getting it from Shanghai or Berlin. I don't believe that anyone currently has an order for a Gigatexas model. I used to. I thought they were going to do a quiet, like silent launch where they just start like under the radar, start delivering Model Y long ranges to the East Coast that are software locked to 330. Because I remember and read about this time where Tesla was legally required to change the name of the Model S because they posted a different because they changed something with the battery pack or they changed the overall configuration, and the EPA was like, if you're submitting a new vehicle with different range numbers, then you have to name it something different. You can't just have two models of the same year that have an identical name, except one of them has this range and one of them has this range. So the EPA basically requires them to come up with some kind of different reference or different name. So I'm under the belief that once Gigatexas is ready to start delivering vehicles, they will update the website, potentially only for certain markets. It's very possible that they could restrict it to be like... Actually, I was thinking about this. The way they launched the lithium iron phosphate Model 3, at first they did not just switch all standard range Model 3s to LFP. they were like, okay, so you've been waiting on your standard range Model 3 for a while, but within existing inventory, we're going to load up a bunch of lithium iron phosphate Model 3s. And at the time, their range was like 253, I think, or 252. And they were like, the range is a little bit lower, but you can charge it to 100%. So you couldn't even order it specifically through the configurator, but it was available in existing inventory. Um, EPA never rated the sneaky 2021 LFP Model 3. I think they did. If you go back, it's a different efficiency than the current one. They changed the battery pack, and that's why it got slower. So the rating was nerfed at first, but once they software unlocked the buffer in the LFP pack, the range became 262 miles. That one is on the EPA's website. If you plug in the Model 3 rear-wheel drive from 2021, the total range is 262, and it even has a faster 0 to 60 time. But I believe for 2022, they switched it over to a lower-powered motor, and that's why the 0 to 60 time went down to 5.8 seconds instead of 5.2. But that lower powered motor had better efficiency, and I think they even increased the physical size of the LFP pack a little bit, and that's how they got 272 miles of range. That's the one I'm getting, which I'm all in favor of. Give me the slower car. I'll take the slower car with more range. Tesla can achieve 500 plus miles with Cybertruck with next generation efficient powertrain and compact like Lucid and 4680. Here's a big debate between that. Can they? Yes. Will they is a different thing. Elon said they could have done a 600-mile range Model S last year, but they decided against it because they realized that that kind of range in an EV actually ruins a lot of your efficiency for daily driving. Sure, 600 miles of range becomes really, really helpful on like a road trip or when you're towing, but that's not most driving. Most driving is not towing on road trips. It's probably a higher percentage if you're doing like a pickup, if you're a pickup truck, which is why I hope they prioritize high range with the Cybertruck, because we all know once you start towing, that range is cut in half. But with a family sedan like the Model S, a 600-mile range is just going to mean hauling around a bunch of extra batteries for daily driving, and that's going to make your efficiency worse. It's just not useful. And it also means you can't build as many vehicles because you have to include a huge number of cells in each car. So that drives the price of manufacturing up. It ruins your daily driving efficiency. So overall, it's just not worth it to Tesla. It's totally possible for them to do it. If they felt like, if there was some grand prize, or if Tesla's mission statement was to make the vehicles with the most range, if that was their mission statement, yes, they could easily pop in a bunch of 4680s that are high energy density into a Model S. You know, Model S is still using 1865 cells, so they could probably opt for 2170, which are more energy dense and get better range than they are today. But there's not much advantage to doing that because the backlog is already there. The only reason you would really consider increasing range numbers is because not enough people are ordering your car. If you wanted more people to buy your car, that's when you would focus more on improving range numbers and making it faster or making it cheaper. That's how you make it more desirable and get more people to order it. Model S is already back ordered. There's so many people ordering that thing. They don't need need more people buying that thing. So that's why they decided to use the old battery cells that are less energy dense and not switch it to 4680 because they would rather use those cells in something more important like Gigatexas ramping up. Vin posted on Twitter of a company, Model Y from Texas, had Model Y standard on Vin looked up, so likely no one has a reservation for Austin version yet, as there is not on the website. It's true. That's my theory as well. I think everyone with a Model Y order right now is getting it from Fremont or Berlin or Shanghai. I believe that maybe Tesla will put up a bunch of standard all-wheel drive models on existing inventory, so it won't even be part of the configurator. You know why I think they might do that? You guys are going to hate this. This is my new speculative theory. Oh my god, I love speculation so much. And I'm also so glad I got my Model 3 order in, because if I was still waiting around for Model Y information, I would be so frustrated. Here's what they could do. Because the volume production of Gigatexas is going to be low at first, right? They can't build a ton of vehicles all at once. They may say, okay, yeah, technically the standard range all-wheel drive Model Y from Gigatexas, yeah, technically that starts less than the long-range Model Y, because the long-range Model Y currently starts at 63,000. They could price this lower, say 60, maybe if they're feeling generous, 59, $58,000. But if they only launch it through existing inventory, just like the sneaky LFP Model 3, you include FSD on every single one. So that means if you want to buy an existing inventory Model Y, it's got to be $70,000. Like if it's, let's say they decide standard range all-wheel drive Model Y starts at 58 grand, so it's 5 grand less than long range, but it includes the $12,000 full self-driving package on every single existing inventory. That means that if anybody wants a Gigatexas Model Y, they gotta pay 70 grand for it. And because it's new, it's not a used vehicle, they can kind of get away with that because there's not going to be high miles on it. There's still a chance that maybe they've swapped out the 4680s for LFP at some point, but I just haven't seen much evidence of that. They haven't talked about doing that, and it feels like Gigatexas has been optimized for 4680 from the ground up. Like that's all they talked about at the last earnings call was like, yeah, we're building structural pack Model Ys with the 4680 cells. So now this mysterious, suspicious new EPA listing came out, and of course, like Oofdad said, there's a Gigatexas Model Y with the VIN decoded that says it's a standard range. So I do believe they're using 4680 cells to build standard range vehicles. And yes, they're being sneaky about it they're going to mandate all Model Ys from Texas come with FSD. That way they all can secure very, very high profit margins with every single vehicle sold. They can use fewer cells on each vehicle because the range isn't very high. It's 279. It's a structural pack, so they get to bypass a lot of the complexities of the 2170 pack. Single piece castings, next generation paint shop. They lower the price of everything, and then only FSD equipped Model Ys built for the first couple months. And then once Gigatexas ramps up, maybe you'll start to find some that are available without FSD for cheaper. But I think Tesla is well aware of the demand they have right now. They're aware of the backlog, and they have to be very, very careful with how they introduce new models. And I think it's smart. I think it's, from a business perspective, it's really, really smart. From a consumer perspective, it sucks because we were all excited for 4680s and new battery tech and all these new cells and stuff. And we were hoping for, better range, better efficiency, lower cost. There are all these advantages we were looking forward to, but it's all basically going to Tesla because the demand is too high for their yesterday's technology. So I'm predicting they're going to only make Model Ys that have FSD equipped so they can justify a huge high price on them. Why? Because then people will not feel inclined to cancel their Fremont orders. I don't think Tesla wants a bunch of people canceling their Fremont Model Y orders. They have this huge backlog already, and they want those people with those reservations to feel like they have a good deal. They locked in their price before the price increase, and they're getting 330 miles of range. Gigatexas model comes out and it's 70 grand with less range. Yeah, all the Fremont orders are going to be like, no thanks, I guess. But I did see some people complaining that even some of the Giga Berlin Model Ys had some minor quality control issues. So I thought that they were aiming to not have that type of problem, and Giga Shanghai didn't seem to have that much quality control problem. So I don't know if there's just an ultra sharp eye on the new builds. We don't have a lot of data that suggests, here's how many issues Fremont Model Ys have, here's how many issues Berlin Model Ys have. I don't know what the numbers are, but still, I think the advantages of going with a 4680 Model Y this year are probably not very good. That's why we decided to go with the Model 3. Is we were like, there's still so much we don't know about this Model Y, it's still very up in the air what kind of vehicle this is going to be, how it's going to be priced, how you can charge it with like even if I'm wrong and it ends up being LFP, that's a big selling point for a lot of people because if it's iron phosphate and you can charge it to 100% every day, I think a lot more people are going to be comfortable going with 279 miles of range. Whereas if it's a 4680, that's a nickel based cathode. It doesn't want to be charged to 100% daily. So if it is a 4680, which at this point I think it's a high likelihood that it is, that means 279 miles of range, but you're charging to 85% every day, which is even less. So that would make it far less appealing than the long range option. Friday says, I feel like most people buying Teslas don't know anything about 2170 versus 4680 or anything like that. They just want a car and read what's front and center on the website and order one. That is most people, yes, I agree. But it's also, there's also a fairly large community of people online that are either on Reddit or on YouTube or on Twitter following this EV stuff because at least from the conversations I've held with Tesla agents and Tesla customer support, they have pre-made answers. They're used to people asking about that. They have preset answers of like, oh yeah, the 4680s are coming, but they're not that much different. They're used to people asking about the new cells. And there were a lot of people who watched Battery Day. I mean, that got how many views? Let me look it up. And that's what Battery Day was all about. So Tesla had a whole event dedicated to these new cells. Almost 4 million people watched Tesla Battery Day. So I'm sure there's at least some people that are holding off on ordering or trying to spend, like Sawyer Merritt, for example, who has over 200,000 followers on Twitter. He's specifically delaying his Model Y order because he wants to ensure that he gets a 4680 model. There are definitely, oh yes, I would say most Tesla buyers are probably not enthusiasts. But there's also, I'm also going to say not a small number of people that are enthusiasts that follow the Battery Day announcements and the factory updates, and it's a decent market of people that are following this, and they want to know when to buy, when are they buying dated hardware and that kind of thing. One had a bent front hood. That's user error. Oh, got user error. Sorry, gotcha. Front hood had a bent in it. That's not good. But yeah, it's like once we get a bit more of a sample size for the Giga Berlin Model Ys, we'll figure out if these new factories are supposed to have better quality control. I would not look at the pre-made test Model Y from Gigatexas that had some quality control issues and say, oh, that means Texas quality control is crap. It's like, well, they're calibrating the equipment right now. They're literally testing the facility to make sure everything is working. I don't think everything is just flawless and they're building hundreds of Model Ys and being like, let's keep building them even though we can't deliver them yet. Let's keep building them. It's like, no, they're calibrating everything and they're waiting for final approval, I believe. Let's see. Lower size of packs makes more cars. Right. That's why I think, because I know a lot of people were saying, wouldn't it make more sense for Texas to make, I don't know what Center Stage is doing. I want to turn it off because it doesn't want to just stay attached to my head. I wonder if Tesla did some of the math on, because a lot of people's logic was, why doesn't Texas do what Berlin did and just make performance Model Ys? Because performance Model Ys are inherently lower in demand. There's less people buying for them. You can charge a premium for them. And some people were like, well, just make a super ultra performance plus Model Y that has a ton of 4680 cells, super long range, faster acceleration. Basically, I've seen other people let's call it the ludicrous Model Y. Maybe not plaid because I don't think they can do a plaid powertrain in there, but a ludicrous Model Y with insane acceleration, great range, and charge an insane amount for it, and that's how you taper demand. You taper off demand on this model by making it really expensive. And then Fremont can just build long range, and Texas can just build performance for the time being. And then once it ramps up, then they're okay with making lower tier options. Maybe Tesla did the math on that and realized we could sell more vehicles at a higher profit by using fewer cells in each vehicle but making them at least somewhat more obtainable, putting them closer to $70,000 or $60,000 instead of 75, 80, and those Model Ys people will actually be able to afford, so people will buy it. Um, let's see. I got lucky with my April 2021 Model 3. It's dang near flawless. Awesome. I'm glad you like it, Ivan. I'm hoping for some luck with mine. It's your boy, Flyboy. Thanks for thanks for tuning in. Hopefully, Deep Crimson Red and Mercury Silver come to Gigatexas this year. That would be interesting. Probably they'll charge a pretty penny for it though, because a bunch of people. Tesla hasn't offered a new color option in years at this point. I think it's been like 5 years since they introduced a new color. Has it really been that long? They've gotten rid of lots of colors over the years, but I'm trying to think. What was the last new Tesla color that came out? Extreme scale equals we need way more factories. Yep, I think that's the plan. I think they're already planning on Giga Shanghai expansion, and they're probably scouting new locations in China simultaneously. Elon already referenced in a previous podcast that they might put a factory on the East Coast eventually, so they'll have 3 in the United States. That's probably overkill for right now, but yeah. Plaid rotor should fit in Model 3/Y motor housing with existing inverter. It could, but it would be so low volume, like that. Long term, Gigatexas is going to make 500,000 vehicles a year. You don't need to complicate the assembly line with Plaid powertrains because not that many people are going to buy the Plaid. The only reason people were suggesting Texas start with performance Model Ys because we know at the beginning factory output is low, and by beginning I mean like the first couple quarters, like the first 3 to 6 months. After that 3 to 6 months, and they're ramping at hundreds of thousands per year, then having a dedicated powertrain for just Plaid is going to be probably unnecessary. Any new info on this Cybertruck I've been waiting on since 2019? I'm the first one to jump on Cybertruck news. You know that. I'm going to make videos on the tiniest of updates and tiniest of details because, just like you, I'm excited. I'm very excited on the Cybertruck coming out because I think it's so different from all their other vehicles, and I think it's so different from every other vehicle on the road. Tesla is already so far apart from everybody. And the Cybertruck is just on a whole nother level. So I want any new information on the truck possible. I'm not sitting on anything and not talking about it, I assure you. Colors, what are those? You planning on doing a video on the master plan phase 2? I think you mean phase 3. But once we know what it is, probably I'll do a video on it. But I kind of found I don't know what phase 3 is going to be about, but I have a feeling it's going to involve a bit more autonomy and Tesla bot stuff, which I'm not excited for. I think Elon is getting not distracted. That's not the right word. But I think Elon's just getting a little bit ahead of himself or too excited for AI and Tesla bot when I don't think that technology is close. The reason I would personally recommend Tesla change their narrative and change their viewpoint on autonomous driving is because their logic of it is, okay, we're using neural net, we're using Tesla Dojo and whatever. Well, not yet, but we're trying to make the software better and better and better, but we believe it's this far away. That's where I take issue, is like when they start saying, we believe it's gonna happen this year, it's gonna happen within the year, and people are like, hey, it doesn't really matter when it comes out. The point is it's coming, whether it happens next year or in 2 years or in 3 years. And I'm like, what if it doesn't though? And you can't say that that's not possible because it hasn't been achieved, and we have documented cases of Elon talking about it being ready next year for literally like 6 years now. There were interviews in 2014 where he was saying the car would drive itself in 2015, and then it was, we'll do a cross-country road trip completely autonomously in 2017. And here we are in 2022, and that's still not possible. So I'm like, we have a long history of missed deadlines with this. And I think we should just try to be a bit more realistic about it. Again, I'm not saying you shouldn't pursue these things. I think that human driving causes a lot of problems, and we definitely need development and we need attention driven towards software and self-driving. And I'm a fan of autopilot, and I'm going to use it all the time when I get my car, and I want to try the FSD beta, and I want to make videos on that. I'm still interested in the development. I just wish they would change their narrative about the timeline. Don't brand it as full self-driving because, well, one day it will be full self-driving. That's why we're calling it that. It's like, you don't really know that. You're hoping that, but you've been hoping it for 6-7 years now, and it still hasn't happened. How can we discredit someone for saying, how do you know it still won't be here in another 6-7 years? You don't know. You can look at some evidence, and you can look at the growth and development and go, oh yeah, it's getting better. I'm sure it's improving, and I'm sure it is getting better. But again, you've said next year before. You've said it many times. It's like boy who cried wolf situation. So I think that's what most of Master Plan Phase 3 is going to be. I think it's mostly going to be Elon talking about how we can accelerate the transition to sustainable energy faster if we have robo taxis. Because, of course, a robo taxi is more useful than a car sitting in your garage or sitting in a parking lot all day. So he's going to be like, Phase 3 involves creating a massive fleet of robo taxis that drop the cost per mile of transportation to an insane low. And it's going to be about Tesla bot becoming more and more capable and replacing more and more jobs, especially boring and repetitive tasks. I get the idea of it. It's always been next year, and I get the premise of, yeah, the market cap and the revenue models for Tesla all shoot off the charts as soon as you talk about a humanoid robot that learns things through AI. Like, I understand the excitement there. I just don't personally see the technology being that close. Some people are like, well, you haven't seen it. You haven't been within the company. You don't know what Elon's seen. And I'm like, well, Elon, there were the emails that Elon wanted to make the Model Y without a steering wheel. So we know that Elon thought, at least in 2018 or 2019, no, it must have been 2018 because Model Y was unveiled in early 2019. We know that there were years, like 5 or 6 years ago, where Elon thought autonomy was so close that we can start manufacturing cars without steering wheels. And he was definitely way off on that, and it's nowhere close at this point. The trail of nines is a lot further away, I think, than people realize. And every one of these beta updates, it's like, okay, it got a little bit better here, but it got worse here. And, one update is great for one demographic and it's terrible for another demographic. And it's not like every single update is better than the last, unfortunately. Oftentimes there's a new update and it's worse than the last update for certain people, and there's all these interventions, and we need to start getting to the point where zero intervention drives are boring. Like, that becomes typical, and that becomes very, very common. And even then, we still got a ways to go because we got regulators and we got, a lot of things the FSD beta still doesn't even do, like finding a parking space and leaving the parking lot. And, most of the time, the people doing these FSD beta videos, they're activating them when they've already pulled out of their garage or pulled out of their parking space, or when they already took it on a public road. They're not like in a crowded parking lot in their parking space and then turning it on and putting in a destination. There's still a lot to be done. So I'm excited for it because my dream is not robo taxis. My dream has always been just the car drives itself and I'm there enjoying myself. I'm watching a movie, reading a book, or live streaming or doing work. Rashab says, the issue with self-driving is we never know our maximum is global or local. Maybe when we think the problem is about to be solved, something new comes up. Yeah, that happened. That they openly admitted that because they thought, if you remember watching Autonomy Day back in 2019, they mentioned, like, yeah, we think robo-taxis will be done by the end of 2020, and there will be 1 million of them. and we just need a bit more labeling to do, and they reached a local maximum. How do you know the current approach of neural net training and 4D, the computer interpreting its surroundings as a video? How do we know there's not another local maximum? It would be a lot easier to know if someone had achieved level 4, level 5, but it hasn't happened, so we don't know. Um, I'd never use my personal car for a Robo Taxi. Yeah, I would not either, honestly. Even if it paid pretty well, I want my own car. Call me individualistic, call me selfish, but sorry, I want my own things. I don't want to use a car that 50 other people have used every day. I've used public transport before. I used to take the bus to school. I know how people treat things when they're public, and when lots of people can access them. It's just, yeah. So I'm not terribly excited for Master Plan Phase 3, because I actually think Master Plan Phase 2 has not been completed. Um, I don't really know what other bits of information. I mean, the most interesting parts for me about the previous master plans was always Elon saying, we want to build out an electric vehicle option and improve solar and energy storage, but we want to make like an electric version of all major segments. So that includes a van, that includes a semi truck, that includes a pickup truck, and I'm sure that it includes a compact car, that includes a full size SUV. Heck, that probably includes construction equipment. They want to make electric bulldozers someday. Like, there's all kinds of new models, which I think from the YouTube side of things is the most interesting part. That's what most people like talking about, right? Like, the most common comment I see whenever I do Cybertruck videos is, can they do an SUV that's like a 9-seater? Can Tesla do a van? Can Tesla do an RV? I want a Tesla super product that's an RV with solar and Powerwall built in, and it has Starlink, and you can connect to Wi-Fi on it, and you just drive it around the world and just have your own little mobile office, and you can supercharge it. All these new model ideas people have. I want a motorcycle. I want Tesla's version of an Aptera. I want a quad. I want a SUV. That's the most interesting part. I personally would be far more interested in Tesla diversifying their lineup with different range options. Like, I would love a rear-wheel drive lithium iron phosphate Model S and X, just because I love those interiors, and I think they have a fantastic design with the yoke and the driver display and the center display being 17 inches. I love that design of the Model S and X, and I love the practicality that it's the hatchback, and the Model X can sit 6 people a lot better than a Model Y can. But I don't need the 400-mile range. I don't need the absurd acceleration. I'm just not a performance nut. I don't care about the track performance. I don't care if it's a 270-mile range Model S or a 250-mile range Model X. If I can charge it to 100% every day and it's still a Tesla, I don't like. I want them to make more stuff like that. It's just like, let's lean into more of the people who don't necessarily want a fast car, but they just want a nice car, and you could sell those for lower prices. Now the Model S and X prices are off the charts, so it's already gotten crazy. But that's more interesting to me, and I think that's not what Elon is interested in. Probably because he knows that anyone can think of those things, and Elon wants to spend his time and attention on difficult problems that have yet to be solved, and he's very good at it. I know someone was mentioning earlier. Seymour said, "Is it safe to say that Elon's greatest strength is his abilities to sell an idea or dream?" I wouldn't say that's his greatest strength. I think his best strength is as an engineer. He's an engineer first and foremost, and he works directly with both software and hardware engineers at SpaceX and Tesla. And the amount of things that his team, I would almost argue, his greatest strength is to assemble people, which maybe that's what you're trying to say. Sell an idea to employees. I'm not trying to say, because my argument is that Elon is not honestly like a wonderful business person. He's not a great sales guy. Have you heard the man talk for more than 10 minutes? He's not as slick. He's not as eloquent with his words as Steve Jobs, or he's not like a used car salesman in terms of, oh yes, this is a fantastic product. And I would say Peter Rawlinson is probably a better salesman than Elon is. Elon isn't selling products, he's selling recruitment techniques, and he can assemble a great team of engineers that know how to work together and make uh, great things possible. Like the reusable rocket boosters is probably his greatest achievement as of now, or scaling to extreme size, as he said, um, to making EVs at a higher and higher run rate. And his time spent on the assembly line and sleeping at the factory and figuring out how to mass produce a very complicated vehicle. As we've discovered, all these legacy automakers and other startup companies are struggling to mass produce EVs, and Tesla was somehow able to do it and then come out alive and well and now become extremely profitable. I think that's where Elon put his attention to, was the manufacturing scalability. And I think he's starting to kind of see the light at the end of the tunnel and realize, wait a minute, like, okay, we've figured out how to mass produce EVs, and we're figuring out how to mass produce 4680 cells, and we're going to rely more on lithium iron phosphate, which CATL is working on scaling, and I'm sure Tesla will probably work on scaling too. So I think that's where Elon is now stepping away and say, okay, I already see a path to success. The people who already work at Tesla and the people who are already engineers there, they're figuring out how to continue this production ramp. We're pretty confident that most of these gigafactories are going to max out once Gigatexas is fully built out, once Giga Berlin is fully built out. They're going to use a lot of the same techniques, just more and more 4680 production equipment and more single piece castings. Once that's all figured out, all of these factories are going to do 1 million to 2 million a year. I think Giga Shanghai is already coming close to 1 million a year. And once all these factories are doing that, we're going to achieve 10 million a year, 15 million a year, 20 million a year. It's just a matter of building out enough of these locations, building new gigafactories. So he sees a clear path to success even without him. He sees Tesla achieving these insane production capacity goals without his help. So now he's spending more and more time on things that are harder, like software development, like the Tesla bot, and figuring out how to tackle those difficult problems. And that's why Master Plan Phase 3 is going to be more so about, well, if we make a high volume Robo Taxi, that can replace 5 gas vehicles instead of today. All of our Teslas are replacing 1 gas car with 1 EV. With a Robo Taxi, we can replace 5 gas cars. So that's going to be most of Phase 3, in my opinion, is all going to be autonomy and Robo Taxis and Tesla bot. And I have a harder time believing that, because I do believe Elon can solve hard problems, and he's done incredible things, and he's assembled amazing teams, but I don't think he can fix and solve everything. I think it's important to remember, as cool as he is and as much as he's accomplished, not all things are necessarily possible. Maybe that's too pessimistic of a viewpoint. Maybe that's discouraging. I think it's great to see people try, even if level 5 ends up being impossible. If we end up with level 3, that's still a win in my book. I will never fault someone for trying to accomplish something amazing like that, and I hope I'm wrong. I hope they do achieve it this year. I do. I think it would be an amazing thing, and I think it would save countless lives to achieve that. So, like, yeah, it's worth going after. I don't believe pursuing full self-driving is a waste of time, but I think being realistic about the timeline is also important, especially if you're selling a software package on it. If FSD has X number of value for rideshare companies, do you think personal car owners will pay for the convenience? Will they be priced differently? Try to understand what you're saying. Personal car owners will pay that for the convenience. I could see a lot of people not paying for full self-driving just because of how expensive it gets, if that's what you're asking. Yeah, I don't even think most people... Like, okay, currently, if you want a personal driver, right, you'd have to pay them 60 to... It would probably cost you $100,000 a year to just have a guy on salary at any given moment ready to drive you at a moment's notice. Most people don't pay for that, right? Let's say Tesla brings the value of that down to Okay, right now it's $12,000 up front. I'm sure when it goes to wide release, or if they find a way to make FSD accessible to the masses, and it works, and it's level 4, level 5, um, they raise the price to 20,000, and it's $400 a month instead of 200. Are there people that would pay $20,000 to have a dedicated driver? Yeah, probably more than there are people who would pay 100 grand a year to have a designated driver, private, limo service that drives you around whenever you want. But is it most? Would most people pay 20 grand just to have a car drive them? Probably not. I mean, most people probably are buying used cars, not new. So, how many people are actually buying that expensive of a vehicle? Could I see a lot of people that are like, yeah, my car is capable of driving itself, but I'm going to drive it because that's cheaper? Yeah, that I do believe. Um, there will be some people that pay for the convenience. Yes, my prediction is that eventually Tesla will get that price point low enough and affordable enough. Like, from the business world, it makes the most amount of sense to show the lowest possible price point. That's why a lot of smartphone companies and computer companies like Apple and Samsung, they will often advertise their phones by a monthly cost, not a total cost. It's like, no, the phone isn't $1,000. It's just like $30 a month for 2 years. They try to get the lowest possible number in front of you. And I think the logical next step that they'll probably do with level 4, if they do achieve autonomous driving like that, is you'll plug in a destination, and right next to navigate on autopilot, there's just going to be a little button that says, I will drive you here myself for $4, $5. And they can place the price point really, really low. And if you're on a road trip or something and you're like, I'm in San Francisco, I want to drive all the way to New York City. You plug in New York City and it's like, I'll drive you there for X number of dollars, whatever that ends up being, whether it's $50 or $100, or it might be a lot, I don't know. But because that's not accounting for the price of supercharging. Maybe they could include that or something, and it'd just be like, all in one, this car will autonomously drive you to this place for $150. That's, it'll just have a little price point right on the software that you can tap, and it charges you just like time of use with supercharging. Like, the longer you're at the supercharger, the more expensive this charging session gets. The longer you're on FSD, the longer it gets. So that's what I think it'll eventually turn into, because those prices will likely be lower than $200 a month, or $300 a month, or whatever it ends up being. But that's just one prediction. I think the interesting thing about part 3 will be how the focus shifts from how to accelerate transition to sustainability to how accomplish transition to sustainability, massive scaling. I just don't know what that means, I guess, because I thought that was already included in Master Plan Phase 2 is, grow to an extreme scale. Keep in mind, master plans are not very detailed. I think a bit too many people are getting excited about this master plan. The first master plan was like, make a high price, low volume car, use that money to make higher volume but still luxury car, and then use that money to make a high volume, low price car. That's pretty much all of Phase 1. It was not this like 30-page manual in detail of how they were going to do all that. It was just, in general, our master plan, make expensive car, turn that into more car that less expensive. I don't expect Phase 3 to be extremely in depth, which is why I guess I'm not terribly interested in the subject unless he includes some giant big upgrade thing. But my prediction is Phase 3 is just going to be grow to 20 million vehicles a year. I think that's what we're getting excited for. To continue to grow production at higher output. We've already known Tesla plans at growing at 50% per year, and they've exceeded that several times. In fact, most of the time, I think they've exceeded 50% growth a year, which is great. And I personally believe they will continue to do so. Just do the math. Apply a 50% production capacity increase over the next 9 years. They'll be at 20 million a year by 2030. And I believe that, personally. I think they'll get there. And I think they can mostly do it just by continuing to do what they've already done. Find ways of making the vehicle more efficient so it requires less battery, fewer battery cells, and make more factories that use single piece castings, and look for ways of cost savings and weight savings like structural battery pack, and making the powertrain draw less power, um, finding parts that don't need to be there and taking them out and simplifying production. Keep on doing that. Keep doing what you're doing. Build out more factories so that you have more supply chains, mining for materials, finding more efficient ways of harvesting nickel and lithium and iron, and find more ways of building lithium iron phosphate packs, and just keep on doing what we're doing. I don't think there's some magical alien recipe of how we're going to scale faster. I think it's just going to be a lot of what they've been doing. Um, GM is claiming level 5 with Ultra Cruise on the Celestic. I don't hear them claim level 5. That sounds like you don't understand what level 5 is quite. Unless there's something GM said, but I feel like more people would be talking about that. The thing with Robo Taxis is that Robo Taxis are just not the best way to move people around cost wise or environmentally. EVs are one thing, but as soon as EVs go from personal to public, it falls apart. I don't think that's the biggest problem. Um, Theoretically, they don't exist, but let's say they did. Let's say Tesla figured out Tesla Dojo, and the autonomous driving software worked incredibly well. It's a fairly efficient way to get people around if the car is completely electric, and it can pick up people and take them wherever they want to go, and it basically acts as a taxi, except it's now much, much cheaper. I agree. I think there's complications that Elon is not considering, like who cleans up the car and who charges the car, and um, who maintains the vehicle. So it's like, how passive of an income stream is this really? Even so, even if it's not that passive, and Tesla has to put out designated owners, or employees that have to stand at superchargers and plug in the robo taxis, and they're there to clean up robo taxis when there's a mess. Even so, that's still going to be way cheaper than an Uber or a taxi. And there's a lot of jurisdictions where public transportation is just either not reliable, or people don't enjoy it, or people don't want to do it, um, or the schedules are just too structured, and too not flexible enough for people's varying needs. A lot of people don't want to have to check a bus schedule, or check a taxi, or check a train schedule every time they want to go somewhere. Um, and also, they can trains, subways, and buses can use a lot more energy, especially during low volume uh, traffic. So if there's just one person that needs to go from one part of the town to the other, and the bus is on a strict schedule, that whole bus is moving all of this fuel, and it's very unaerodynamic just for one person. Whereas a robotaxi could scale down to, okay, if there's not that many people right now, then we don't have to use more energy. And if no one is hailing a taxi, then we don't have to do anything. Whereas if it's a public transportation source, regardless of what the demand is for the bus to be operational, you got to pay that bus driver, and you got to pay to power that bus, and whatever if it's electric or gas, it's got to be moving. That'll be consuming more energy. Whereas Tesla robotaxis could just stop and park and not move when not needed. Um, Plugs cars in and out of superchargers, boring, repetitive. Yeah, the Tesla bot would be great at that. But now, what happens when people vandalize it and mess around with it, which will happen? Um, but yeah, I agree with Mike. Reusable rockets and FSD are two different ball games. I do genuinely believe that. I've said this before. I don't know if I've said it recently. I think there's a decent chance people will walk on Mars before level 5 autonomy is achieved. I know one of those sounds more complicated than the other, but I see a clear path to success with SpaceX becoming multiplanetary and putting people on another planet. I see that working out. I see Starship development growing and getting better, and they're improving the Raptor engines, and it's just a matter of time and government approval. But eventually, yes, I do think SpaceX will put human beings on the moon and Mars. Um, I have more faith in that happening than I do Tesla making level 5 robo taxis. Uh, I just think there's so many variables, and there's so much complexity involved, and there's so many things that are hard to account for with a car driving itself, and so many edge cases. that I think there's a decent chance they might find another local maximum in their current FSD development. Um, I think this will become way cheaper once there are 4 to 5 companies all offering level 4, level 5 autonomy. It could if it becomes competitive, but I'm not convinced Tesla will necessarily achieve level 5. So I have an even harder time believing, like, I see a lot of people that are just like, well, other companies will figure it out too. It's like no other company is using a similar self-driving approach technique that Tesla is. No other company is developing like their own custom silicon and collecting as many miles driven as Tesla has. Even if Tesla does achieve robo taxis, I don't think that the competition will come right after. I think the competition will realize they have to do what Tesla did in order to achieve that, and it will probably take them years. Tesla will probably be, if it does happen, the only option, the only company that has that software for many years to come. And Tesla has even admitted that they are willing to license out that software. So I think what's far more likely is if Tesla does achieve it, which again, I'm not sure they will, but if Tesla does achieve robo taxis, it will be cheaper for the competition to license out the software from Tesla than to try to develop their own in-house version of it because of how many miles they're going to have driven and their neural net training and the software and the algorithm that has taken years and years of perfection for Tesla to figure out. I don't think other companies will just be able to replicate that overnight. I think it's going to take a long, long, long time. Um, FSD is easy if we just redesign all of our roads and parking lots. Yeah, because that's easy. I also don't think that's the biggest problem. I think it's more just human behavior and the way certain streets and parking lots are laid out, which you can't just easily redesign all of that. That would cost probably trillions of dollars. Scott says robotaxis make sense in cities, but where I live in the middle of nowhere, I just don't see how it would be practical. No, I agree. I'm also under the belief that taxis in general, taxis and public transportation make the most amount of sense in densely populated areas. They don't make as much sense in rural communities and more spread out parts of the country, like where I live. Um, I don't think even if there were a ton of robo taxis, it would make sense. Uh, Reusable rocket analogy is just a reminder that we can't bet against Elon figuring something out, especially something he is passionate about. No, and I think it's important to remember there's a difference between people betting against Elon and doubting that something will be achieved by a certain timeline. For the record, I own Tesla stock. I'm not shorting it. I would never short any stock personally. I think that's just stupid. But I'm not betting against Elon. I'm buying his product. I'm buying a car and I bought Starlink and I use Starlink. I'm not betting on it failing. I'm not hoping it fails. But you don't have to be in complete belief that everything Elon sets out to do, he will achieve, or a short seller. Those are not the only two options. Those are, there's a way to be like, no, I don't believe this will happen, but I do think, that a lot will be achieved, and I do think Elon has accomplished a lot, and I do think it's incredible just the scaling of production. I don't think people pay enough attention to the fact that Tesla went from a few 100,000 cars a year to over 1 million within less than 5 years. That's insane, considering how complicated of a product an electric vehicle is, and how they figured out how to mass produce vehicles. Yeah, I canceled Starlink because I realized there were other people who needed it more than I did, and I found a better option for me. But I'm just saying, I'm not I'm not betting on Elon. I'm not betting against Elon. Let's say that. I put my money towards Starlink because I bet that it would get better over time, and it ended up not getting better over time. Um, but I've spent a lot of money on Starlink and I'm not getting it back, so I'm not like short selling the stock or anything. Um, just make everything a traffic circle. Problem solved. I hope you get the beta so you have a better idea of the capabilities in real time. I don't have beta right now, but I have ridden in a Tesla with FSD beta. Mike has the beta, and we've met up a couple times and used it. I think the last time we used it was for like an hour or so. We were driving around town, and he was using the beta everywhere, and we were seeing how it did. So I have a in real life experience with the beta, and that wasn't also the first time. I also The first time I did a video on it, I think it was with 10.3. We used it for 20 minutes or 30 minutes or so, and then used it for over an hour the next time we met up. So I have experienced it firsthand. Experiencing it firsthand did not convince me that we were close, just for the record. There's things it does well, and there's things that it should not mess up on that it messes up on. There's like abundantly obvious things to us that we're like, how can you not see that? There's like really, really obvious mistakes still, but that's why it's in beta. I get why it's in beta. It makes sense. Let's see. China will force them to give the software to a Chinese company, then that company will license it. Okay, but then it will probably be mostly present in the Chinese market, not the US market. So we don't know that. It's mostly speculation. They have to store all of that data locally, but I haven't seen any evidence that China would force Tesla to give up the software instantly. Dirty Tesla also confirmed his... I'd be happy if my beta could just read a dang no turn on red sign. His doesn't either. Yeah, there's a lot of road signs it still doesn't get. When you cancel, do you keep the dish or do they buy it back? Well, for me, they would not take it back. If you have Starlink for under a year, you can return it and get a partial refund of $200. If you've only had it for 30 days, you can return it and get a full refund. So they still have a 30-day return policy with all your money back, no questions asked. And I owned it for over a year, so they won't offer me any refund, and they don't even want to take my hardware back. So it's mine to keep. They said when I canceled that in the future, if I want to reactivate, I can reach out, and they'll let me know if it's possible. They didn't guarantee that I can turn it back on as soon as I want to. But because of all of this, because of all of the content uploading I do and all of the live streaming I do, Starlink was not a good fit for me. Because Starlink upload speed is not very fast and also not very stable. Download is very fast and fairly stable. We had great experiences with the download speed, which is honestly what most people use internet for, is downloading content. So it was just for me specifically, it didn't make sense to keep. Variety Entertainment says, I guess robotaxis would make sense for small volumes, just don't like the idea of high volume robotaxi trips where trains, etc. would be more efficient. It's not necessarily that simple, because trains... For one, they need rail. They can't just... You can't take a train to your house. I've ridden trains, and I'm gonna take another train trip, honestly, in the not too distant future. I enjoy riding on trains, and I think they're fun, and I think they're cool, but I don't see them as a replacement to most people's cars. I think that they're just an alternative mode of transportation that works from getting you to one train station to the next. But there's a lot of cities and there's a lot of the country laid out in ways that would not make sense. The reason there's been lots of train stations that have closed down, and there's less and less, there used to be, in my hometown, there used to be a stop for trains, and they got rid of it, and now only freight trains go through there. There's no passenger trains anymore, was due to lack of activity. More people were using cars because cars allow for more freedom. You can drive them exactly where you want to go, whenever you want to go. And that's what a robo-taxi could allow for that a train couldn't. A train has to stick to a schedule, and it can't really go down people's houses. People don't want to live next to trains. They're loud and noisy. So in major inner cities, you can put train stations close to certain places where people can walk. But I'm saying the reason U.S. trains suck so much isn't necessarily just due to lack of funding. It's also just because a bunch of people would rather have the freedom of their own car. And, the cars are used for much more than just transportation. But that's part of my argument as to why robo-taxis won't kill off car ownership. I've seen some people say Tesla doesn't... Well, Tesla will be Tesla. But they're like, people don't need to buy cars in the future because robo-taxis will just do all of the driving for you. And it's like, if all cars did was transport people and all that mattered was that it was cheap to transport you, everyone would be buying used, highly efficient Toyota Camrys. They would just buy the cheapest car they could with the best miles per gallon equivalent. But guess what? That's not the most popular car sold. What's been the most popular vehicle sold in the U.S. for like 40 years? It's the F-150. Is the F-150 the most cost effective? No. Is it the most aerodynamic? No. Is it the most efficient? No. But it's a pickup truck. People bought into something that's more practical, that can seat more people, and that can, take a little bit of dirt and people can drive it off road and they can load stuff up in the back. People use vehicles for more than just getting from point A to point B. That's what more public transportation is for, just getting people where they need to go. Whereas in America, people bought cars based on, I want to throw surfboards in the back, or I want to move to this furniture, or, I want to go on a camping trip and bring all this stuff with me. It's like that. It's more than just transport. And that's what robo taxis, I think, would do very well, is they allow for freedom of schedule, freedom of flexibility, and lower cost of energy consumption used per mile. And they can work on roads and streets. You don't have to lay new railway, and you don't have to re-engineer whole cities, because a robo taxi theoretically could drive you straight to your house to anywhere you want to go on road, whereas a train can't exactly do that. You gotta find a bus that aligns with your schedule, and then take that bus to the train station, and then the train takes you to another train station, and then you take a bus off that train station, and all of these steps that people don't like having to plan all of these different chain event reactions for. Some people are just like, I don't just want to get in the car and go. So that's why people have cars. You set up your home charging system yet? Yeah, I have a NEMA 1450 outlet, and I already have the Tesla adapter, the 1450 NEMA plug. So it's probably overkill, to be honest. We probably don't need to charge that fast for the amount of driving we do, but we had to have one outlet in the garage, and that was the one we had. So that'll charge our Model 3, I think, at like 30 miles an hour. And I don't think I need to charge that fast most of the time. But yeah, F-150 also gets a business tax write-off based on weight. That helps too. It's kind of hard to write off your train ticket for business. Yeah, Elon dances at every Gigafactory opening, of course. When you cancel, do you keep... Oh, sorry, I answered that. Elon line dancing to Wagon Wheel or nothing, but you would be quite entertained. He didn't dance very much at Giga Berlin, I'll be honest. I watched the dancing videos. It wasn't very long. I want more Elon dancing gifs, and there wasn't enough. I need more of those. Oh well. Let's see. FSD is easy for just redesign. Yeah, that was funny. Plugging cars in and out of superchargers equals boring and repetitive. Yep. Tesla bots will mind robotaxi cleanup, charging, and turnaround. Right. The product that doesn't exist will take care of the other product that doesn't exist. It's one of those, like, I'll believe it when I see it type things. Super fast trains using electricity would be the cleaner answer to airlines, not cars. Again, it's not quite replacing the purpose of cars, though, because you're not going to have a super fast train going straight to someone's house. People don't need to take a super fast train down to the grocery store, and there's so much variety in where people live and where people work. The concept that you could develop super fast electric trains that go to every possible combination of residential to commercial area is just not feasible. It's it's just not going to work that way. It's good for high volume, but people use cars for more than just point A to point B. I think airlines are probably cheaper than super fast trains, because you just build the plane and it flies. The real reason Tesla's working on the Tesla bot, right? But the Tesla bot is supposed to come after robo taxis, according to Elon. So, not really sure how that's supposed to work. In the meantime, I could see Tesla sending out employees that have to just kind of man the superchargers and make sure everything's working properly. Center stage is funny, huh? It just keeps moving around. It includes a Starlink package in the background. So I don't know what'll happen to our Starlink. We're trying to plan a trip to Australia. If we went to Australia, I would love to try to use Starlink there, but it's getting more expensive. To stay true to their mission, Tesla should build an FUV-like vehicle. I don't know exactly how that stays true to their vision, but Tim Watson says, best use for FSD, have a couple of drinks at a bar, and instead of calling an Uber, you get in your own car and double tap the stock. Drunk driving accidents decrease. I think there's some laws that say it's already illegal for you to be drunk and behind the wheel. It doesn't. I don't. You can still take over at a moment's notice. So it's kind of hard to argue. Well, let's assume the drunk guy won't take over the car, and then it'll be. I think you could probably still get in trouble unless you're in a vehicle that has no steering wheel. Maybe that you'd be fine, but um, yeah, that would be the right thing to do in that situation. I'm not necessarily sure it would be the legal thing to do. I don't think Tesla would advocate for, yeah, drink as much as you want and then just turn on autopilot. It's like, if the drunk driver can physically overpower the steering wheel, then they're still in control. Just don't don't get drunk. There's a better idea. Less material, smaller battery pack, more efficient form of transport. Yeah, but there's there's an argument to be made that if you're building a bunch of something that there's not a ton of demand for, you're not necessarily accelerating the transition. And Tesla is trying to actively develop lower cost of lower energy consumption vehicles in the most popular segments, which is crossovers, pickup trucks, and sedans. Those are what people are buying a ton of. Um, you can't necessarily make everyone change their buying habits overnight and say, well, everyone should just buy an FUV instead. Um, that's what Arcimoto's doing, which I'm glad they're doing, but I don't think it would necessarily help accelerate the transition if the addressable market is much, much smaller, because most people don't buy FUVs over cars. Problem with planes slash airlines is how much fossil fuels they burn. Haven't run the numbers myself, but I've heard they emit more carbon per person per mile than the most combustion cars. It's true, but you're never going to get down to zero necessarily. I don't think we'll ever get down to no carbon is burned. Um, I don't think I don't know if I believe that they emit more carbon per person per mile than most combustion cars. I mean, they're moving a lot of people at once, but it's probably better than a boat because keep in mind a lot of air travel is overseas, which you can't necessarily do via train. Bullet train to the nearest Whole Foods to get my Reese's Pieces at ludicrous speed. Exactly. A lot of air travel is not going from city to city. Like a lot of air travel is people flying to Hawaii or people flying to Europe, and that's a decent chunk of air travel. And trying to the amount of boats and the amount of construction you would have to make to replace that with a train that goes overseas. Yeah, I don't necessarily think that would be better. Um, to be clear, I'm not advocating for drinking and driving, but when FSD matures, this would be a safer option. I'm sure it would be better than no autopilot. Honestly, even if there's drunk drivers now that get behind a Tesla and turn on autopilot, that's illegal and that's still wrong, but it's probably better than not having autopilot. Um, but yeah, there's use cases. You don't have to be drunk for FSD to be useful. Let's be clear on that. It's not just about saving lives. Like humans cause car accidents and car deaths when they're not drunk, just by people checking their phone and not paying attention, or people just getting sleepy. People driving when they're drowsy or tired. Um, that that's a whole other can of worms. It's just like making a car capable of driving itself autonomously and just stay in the lines and slow down when there's a car in front of them and speed up. People fall asleep at the wheel and cause car crashes, and there have been people that fall asleep with autopilot turned on, and they don't cause as many crashes because autopilot's on. Again, it's not like I'm advocating that that's how the feature should be used. You shouldn't fall asleep with autopilot on, but better to have it than to not have it. Absolutely. Overseas train would never work, not anytime soon. I don't know what technology would have to exist for that to happen. You can get a lot of Ubers for $12,000. You can, but I think there's a selling point. There's an advocate. Like the reason I'm interested in Teslas is not because uh I want to save money on Uber rides. It's like I want to have my own car that's I can treat the way I want it, and I can customize it, and I can have it just the way I like it. First of all, I don't like interacting with other people. I don't like I feel like I can't talk about certain things when I'm in an Uber because the driver's right there and he can hear me, and it's awkward, that social interaction of here's this stranger sitting in the car with me. I'd rather be in the car all by myself or with people I know so we can have a conversation. We can listen to the music we want. We can make the jokes we want. We can talk about sensitive issues and not worry about judgment or anything. And also just letting my car that I own drive me where I want to go so that I can relax and either watch a movie or maybe one day theoretically just even fall asleep. It's like, I'm just going to plug in the address on the car. Done. We have our heading. All right. I'm conking out. I'm just going to catch a few winks and I wake up and I'm at my destination. That's an amazing selling point that I would pay money for, and I think it would definitely it already does set Tesla aside from the competition because they have more autonomous driving features than pretty much any other car on the road right now. If you wanted to get your Reese's at ludicrous speed, just get a Model S Plaid. Just tunnel under the Atlantic with Boring Company, then put EV train or a bunch of EVs and charging stations down there. Ain't nobody down there anyways. Yeah, that sounds very cheap opposed to just flying a plane. $12,000 gets you the best cruise control available. 100% worth it after an 11-hour road trip with 95% of the drive on autopilot. Well, that's the thing I'm curious to try out because I'm wondering if we have road trips planned. In fact, there's a road trip we're planning on taking right after we take delivery of our car. And after that, I want to try it with just autopilot and see if... Maybe, here's an idea. Maybe I'll drive there with just autopilot, and then I'll get FSD on the way back. That might make a fun video. Like road tripping with autopilot versus FSD. And I'm not planning on doing the 12K. I'm just going to do 200 a month out of a couple months out of the year. Thank you, Variety. Thanks for tuning in. Tesla should tokenize their Robo Taxi fleet when it's online so people could own a fraction of the fleet and share the profit. If a robotaxi costs $20,000 to produce and they tokenize it for $40,000 equals profit. I would say that's kind of like just Tesla shares. I mean, you share in the profit, you own part of the company. Just buy Tesla stock. They don't need tokens. Tokens are like when you want a finite number of taxi drivers. I don't think Tesla wants that. I think they want to flood the market. If robotaxis can be achieved, they probably want to build as many of them as possible. eLoop is a car-sharing company in Vienna which has tokenized its fleet, and it works. I'm sure it works in certain jurisdictions, but it doesn't necessarily help their mission statement. I mentioned earlier that you will have to disengage autopilot with every lane change without FSD. Yeah, I know how it works. I've used autopilot myself, for the record. I know that FSD includes Smart Summon, Auto Park, automatic lane change, but I've done the drive that we're planning to do this summer. I've done that road trip. A lot of that, it's not like driving from San Francisco to LA. I've done that a lot too. There's a lot of lanes and there's a lot of exits and ramps and stuff and going around slower cars and bypassing semi-trucks and that kind of thing. The drive we're doing is more north. There's a lot of that drive that's all one lane. Or it's very empty. It's just long stretches of nothing with a single lane or two lanes and very few people around. So I think on the drive we're planning on doing, autopilot would probably work pretty fine. I'll try to pay attention to how many times I have to disengage to change lanes. But on the drive we're doing, I don't think there's going to be that much lane change. I did it last year. I did the same drive in my dad's pickup truck because he was moving out of state. So he needed someone, even if I had a Tesla back then, I would have had to do it with the pickup truck because they were driving the U-Haul. My mom was driving her car. They needed someone to drive the pickup truck to their new place. So I drove the pickup on that route, and it's a long drive. It's like 14 hours basically, and a lot of it is one lane. It's a way to finance the robotaxi fleet growth, which will cost hundreds of billions. But Tesla's not hurting for money, though. I mean, especially if they can build a robotaxi for $20,000. Keep in mind, they're not selling that taxi, so they don't have to apply the 30% gross margin that they're currently applying to their vehicles. So they could probably build a robotaxi for dirt cheap and then charge what they will for it. Do they need to open it up to third parties to buy a fraction of the profits? Because long term, I think Tesla would rather just keep the profits, and they have a lot of cash in the bank. I don't think Tesla necessarily needs help financing. If you want to own a piece of the robotaxi network, buy Tesla stock. That's that stock will improve and go up as their profits goes up. So I don't think there's a need to sell out ownership in the fleet. But again, that's all assuming this works out. I still think there's a decent chance it won't work out. Drive 100 miles per hour and just stay in the left lane. No lane change is necessary. Yeah, I don't think I would go 100, but yeah, I'm excited to do a road trip in a Tesla because I've never done one. I've driven Teslas short drives around town when we rented one, and then I've briefly driven Mike's Model Y a couple times, but never for very long. So I'm excited to have autopilot just for those very long stretches of highway where there's barely anything going on. That's what I'm pumped for. So we'll do that probably a week or two after we take delivery. So we've got lots of stuff to do. But anyways, I appreciate you all for tuning in. And I've got more stuff to work on, but I always enjoy our talks here. It's always a fun to speculate on what's going to happen and talk about all the software potential. Let's see when they pay dividends. Yeah, I'm a guess 2030. Around 2030 was when they would start consider dividends. But anyway, thank you all for tuning in. Hope you have an excellent rest of your day.